The Mac OS had a backdoor. It's more than just info stealing, cybercrime that's related to the North Korean funded attacks. Now, in the coming weeks or days since 3CX has come out and spoken that yes, we do have a supply chain attack and we're taking on Mandiant, our third-party security advisor, to give us that post-execution reports and to dig into what has happened, they're now giving out the initial results. So they've been able to post this on April the 11th of this year, giving us the initial results of Mandiant's Incident Response. So we're going to go through that now. It says here that Mandiant determined that the attacker infected targeted 3CX systems with TAXHAUL, or aka TxRLoader, malware that, when executed on Windows systems, decrypts and executes shell code located in the file name associated with the machine hardware profile GUID. The malware itself is using a form of encryption that actually ties it to each machine, which means that the decryption has to occur using a Windows Crypt Protect data API to then get the shell code for the next payload. But in that, it means that if we need to threat investigate or look into an infected machine, we can only decrypt using that machine. So it makes it a lot harder. The Mandiant is suggesting that the attacker likely made this design decision to increase the cost and effort of successful analysis by security researchers and incident responders. You can imagine, instead of having the key and saying, hey, here we go, we can put this on any one machine and decrypt it and post-investigate, they have a lot more overhead, a lot more time, because they have to decrypt each individual one to then diagnose that per machine. The attacker used a few stages really in that execution. They initially targeted the 3CX systems with TAXHAUL and hidden in the system32/config and in its own TxR folder, obfuscating it, and obfuscating it. Really is what that's saying. This is the first initial start of the whole thing. So they'll have this attack come in through the TAXHAUL TxRLoader malware. It's going to obfuscate itself into a normal sort of Windows installation area. It's going to also encrypt itself to the machine so that decryption has to happen on the infected machine. It cannot happen like, here's the key, we can just put it on any single one. No, it's individual. And then when it goes to take those instructions, it's going to decrypt that cryptographic key that's unique to each compromised host, and then lead on to the shell code. And the shell code will utilize a complex downloader which Mandiant has named Coldcat. They make mention here that this is separate from the Gopuram, which is referenced in Kaspersky's report, and then they go on to show kind of what happens and the nitty-gritty of it all. But essentially what we're seeing here is DLL sideloading. They're using legit Windows DLL libraries and binaries and such to obfuscate what is malicious. And it might be why we didn't see a threat response straight away. Rather, we saw a delay in that response, and we saw that third-party vendors were picking this up through behavioral analysis rather than a signature base or known threats. And it doesn't really answer how it got there, but it shows us a little bit about inside the attacker's mind, the compromise, and what really happened. Mandiant has also identified that there was a Mac OS backdoor. Currently they have named it SIMPLESEA. They're yet to determine if it overlaps with another known malware family. However, it reaches out to a C2 command and control server or connection, and it's probably going to be around the same idea of trying to be an info stealer, although maybe more. Now they put in a separate part down the bottom here of their post about persistence. They say that the choice of using DLL sideloading creates this persistence that the TAXHAUL malware is going to be sort of hidden and integral or stuck into the system a bit more than, I don't know, let's say an exe file or a service or something else. It's something that's going to be more obfuscated and loaded during each startup, or give the ability for such a thing. Down the bottom here they mention a few of the pulled down or URLs and domains that the C2 was reaching out to. I know that there's a little bit more of a list from what I understand, and some of the domains actually go back to being registered early in February of this year, which suggests that this is a long-term threat. But it also could have been that the threat actors had something set up and they just reused it. So going back to the top, Mandiant's initial results and 3CX post here says that their reference to Coldcat is separate from Gopuram, which is in Kaspersky's report. And that got me sort of interested. What is Kaspersky's report? Let's have a look and dive into that. And as you can see, Kaspersky has released something on the 3rd of April talking about how 3CX supply chain attack might have been more than just the infostealer that we initially saw on the 29th to the 30th of March. They go on to summarize what we did know in the first sort of 24 to 48 hours of this 3CX desktop app coming out as malicious. The infections were spread via a 3CX desktop app MSI installer. An installer for Mac OS had also been Trojanized. The malicious installation package contained an infected DLL library that decrypts a shellcode from the D3D compiler _44.dll libraries overlay and executes it. The decrypted payload extracts C2 server URLs from icons stored in a GitHub repo. So just obfuscation on top of obfuscation, hiding. The payload connects to one of the C2 servers, downloads an infostealer and starts it. The infostealer collects system information and browser history and sends it to the C2 server. So this is like, crazy espionage sort of stuff and a lot of hiding. We're not going to have it reach out to an exact link. We're going to reach it out to an icon that reaches out to a link. That it's just hiding, putting ourselves and embedding ourselves in a DLL library that otherwise is a normal and legit in a normal Windows environment. It's really hiding ourselves in there, putting it through the Electron app, and I guess where that leads to, we're not sure yet. And Kaspersky makes this really cool and intriguing comment. They say, as we reviewed the available reports of the 3CX attack, we began wondering if the compromise concluded with the infostealer for further implants followed. So did it just mean that they wanted information? Was the malware only to steal information, or was there more to it? They go on to say that they've been following a malware module or threat that they have named Gopuram, and have been tracking internally since 2020, 3 years ago. They say that we were investigating an infection of a cryptocurrency company located in Southeast Asia. During the investigation, we found that Gopuram, named after a temple in India, coexisted on victim machines with Apple Jesus, a backdoor attributed to the Korean-speaking threat actor Lazarus. Now we're starting to see the link to North Korea. We've had a few inklings from this. I believe CrowdStrike was the first to initially say that this is more than certain a national state-funded or a hacktivist group from North Korea. And now we're starting to see, okay, there's signs of a known threat actor, Lazarus. So over the years, they observed a few victims compromised with the Gopuram, but the number of infections began to increase in March 2023. And as it turns out, the increase was directly related to the 3CX supply chain attack. They found that some of the modules that they already knew, the DLL library attack that Gopuram used, was actually on these affected machines. And those modules is where it becomes really interesting, really intriguing. So they go into the sort of granular nature of it. I'll link it in this video. Feel free to read through it if you want to really dive deep into it. But I think the main part here is the modules. So they say the Gopuram was initially observed to launch in-memory modules, just like the implants used in the 3CX campaign, and these modules included, which were also found in the 3CX app, ping, So the ability to ping a host specified in the argument, connect to a given host via socket and wait for the server to send data. Registry, so manipulating registry files, so list, add, delete, and export keys. Timestamp, perform timestamping on files. Inject, performs payload injections through syscalls via mapping a shellcode to a remote process and creating a remote thread. KDU, kernel driver utility that allows an attacker to bypass driver signature enforcement, so more obfuscation. Update, encrypt a provided payload and write it to the said place that we now know as the TxRLoader area with the hardware profile GUID. Net, particularly implement features of net command management of users, groups, sessions, and network shares. And one that I've glossed over but I wanted to leave last is service. Manipulate, create list, start, stop, and delete services. This is huge. This means that they can essentially stop any active protection that you might be using from a third party that's scheduled to continue run on this computer. We're just going to stop it. So there goes your active protection. And then they can create a persistence of a type of service that's going to automatically run during the startup of a system and obfuscate that to hide it to look like some sort of system internal thing. So they've really got the full RMM approach, the full remote management of these computers to a lesser degree, but in the areas that you don't want them to have access to. Now, whether or not the threat actors behind the 3CX supply chain attack were going to use any of these modules is anyone's guess. But what Kaspersky's saying here is that they could have. They had the ability, they had the tools. Was info stealing just the first part? Were they testing it out to see if they were going to get caught? Were they then going to lead to something greater? Who knows? It's anyone's idea, but they had the very ability, and that is scary. Now, I'll make mention here that they said the discovery of these modules allowed them to attribute the campaign with medium to high confidence to the threat actor, Lazarus, because Lazarus is behind the Gopuram modules, and likely that the threat actor is going to use the tools that they know and have made and have leveraged before. However, it could also be that these tools were used by another threat actor. Unlikely as it is, but things get sold, things get changed over hands. It's possible, and that's why there is that not definite confidence, but medium to high confidence. Look, there's information that suggests it now. Down the end of their article here by Kaspersky, they make mention that the Gopuram backdoor has been deployed to less than 10 infected machines. So we know that the 3CX supply chain had a dormant state where it was essentially asleep for the better part of 5 days, and then it came to be active, but it wasn't active on all computers. It was only activated on some. So even though a lot of companies, and us included in the internal side, had a detection come up for behavioral analysis where we had the malware infested install on one of our systems and then get blocked, it did not mean that it executed the next stage of the info stealing. So what they're saying here, and what Kaspersky's saying, is that the Gopuram backdoor portion of it has only been deployed on less than 10 infected machines, suggesting that there's a sense of surgical precision to what the threat actors wanted to do. They were targeting people. They weren't just, here's the malware, let's dirty the waters. Mandiant's actual website, Mandiant being the company that 3CX is using, has a blog post and has a report that they had public before this about a North Korean group using cybercrime to fund espionage operations. Super interesting. We'll have to see if this ties into the group Lazarus and the group that is likely linked for the 3CX supply chain attack. This is a very good note that a company that's already looking into cybercrime that's related to the North Korean funded attacks is now working with 3CX to post-investigate an attack that Kaspersky has said with medium to high likelihood is a North Korean threat actor. So I guess what's the take home? The take home is that 3CX will report on this. Mandiant will report on this. We'll learn more about this in the coming weeks, days, months, maybe years. But we need to be proactive in our protection. We need to know that supply chain attacks are becoming more and more targeted, used, because from a threat actor's point of view, if they can target the watering hole, the one place that all these bigger companies come to, and then siphon out their malware, they're going to. And so we need to have protection in place so that the streams of water that come down to our organization, to our business, to our computers, have detection things in place. We use Sentinel-1 for all our customers. Sentinel-1 EDR picked up on this a week before execution, picked up on this when it was still dormant. It blocked it, removed 3CX. Now, Sentinel-1 is only one aspect of a full stack of security, and we need to have that management in place so that we have multiple layers before it comes to our endpoint, to our infrastructure, or to our business and sensitive information. We need to know that we can no longer trust on one thing alone, but need to have multiple layers of security. So my name is Jordan Albaladejo. I'm the owner and lead engineer at Ingest Services. We are a cybersecurity managed service provider. We love it. And if you need help in any way with your business, having that management side of cybersecurity, just give us a call, contact us. We'd be happy to help. Thanks so much for watching.